In this video, we will show you how to replace your ignition coil. On this Lincoln Navigator, you'll have 8 of these, 4 on each side of your engine. Let's get into it. On the driver's side, we're going to remove the air intake system. To do that, come right up along the front. You're going to find 2 cables. Go ahead and pull those right out of place. Once you've done that, continue on up along the back side of the air intake system. You're going to find that you have a rubber hose that makes its way in here. You can either disconnect it from this area or along here. I'll just grab onto this, give it a little tug. We'll pull that off. You want to make sure that the rubber is still soft and pliable. Continue on to your air temp sensor. We'll squeeze that tab, give it a little tug, a quick check for corrosion, and set that aside. Now we can dislodge the 2 air filter housings from each other. There's 1 clamp in the center. Go ahead and lift that up. Separate it. Move along to the area that is connected onto the throttle body. That's along the top of the engine here. Use an 8mm or flathead screwdriver to loosen this clamp. At this point, we can remove this from the engine. Now we can move down along this area for the mass airflow sensor wiring. Right where my thumb is, there's a small squeeze tab. Squeeze that in and separate the wiring. Let's set this aside. Now the next thing we're going to have to do is remove the cover that comes along the valve cover. On this, you're going to find that you have a 13mm headed bolt along the front and a 10mm headed bolt holding it in place on the rear. Let's remove the pair. At this point, we can reach down inside here. We'll grab onto that cover and slide it out of place. Now at this point, the process for removing each one of these coils will be the same procedure. Now the next thing we'll do is reach right down in here. Where my thumb is, there's a small squeeze tab. Go ahead and press that in and pull the wiring off of the ignition coil. We'll give that wiring a quick check for corrosion. Take hold of the ignition coil, give it a wiggle, and remove it from the engine. All right, let's get ready for the installation of our brand new ignition coil. On the rubber boot that goes onto the spark plug, it's a good idea to use a little bit of dielectric grease. That's a special grease that does conduct electricity. We'll slide this into place, making sure that it presses as far down onto that spark plug as possible. Once you have that in there, continue on to the electrical harness. Press that in, listen for a click, and then give it a tug to make sure it's completely secured. At this point, as I had mentioned, the process will be the exact same thing for every other ignition coil on this side. Now we can slide that cover in place. Once it's properly aligned, continue on with your 2 mounting bolts. The 13mm headed bolt goes towards the front, and the 10mm is towards the rear of the engine. We'll start each of these in before we tighten either of them. Just make sure that's nice and snug. Now we can start reinstalling our air intake system. Let's start with the mass airflow sensor wiring harness. Give it a click, give it a tug, make sure it's secure. Now we can bring this up to the throttle body. We'll slide that into position, pressing it on as far as possible. Once you feel as though you have that in place, continue on with your 8mm headed clamp. Make sure it's nice and tight. Air temp sensor. Let's get that vacuum line back in place. Two cables along the front. Resecure your air filter housing. Now, putting this back in place can be a little bit difficult. You just have to work it around. Try to get the inside clamshell over the outer clamshell. Once you do, go ahead and put that clamp in place, holding both of them together, and lock it down. All right, friends, we showed you how to install one of your ignition coils. At this point, go ahead and start up the vehicle, let it run for a little while, make sure you don't have a check engine light, and then take it for a road test. Aside from that, thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.